Okay, folks, I want to show you how to render video, how we actually get output out of Softimage. So let me get your attention. We can turn around, we can look here. I'm going to be recording this too, so you'll have these instructions available. This is the final step that once you've modeled everything and you've textured it the way you like it and you've animated it and you've set up your cameras and your lights, do what you want. This is actually getting stuff out of the program so you can see it on YouTube and so on and so forth, okay? Now again, you have questions as we go, feel free to ask. Here's the truth about every 3D program I know of. None of them actually make movies. They make frames. So everything you do gets spit out as a big pile of frames somewhere else. So when we set up rendering here, what we're going to do is we're going to set up all the things to dump this information into the render engine, in this case something called Mental Rays. And then once it's done, we're going to take all those frames and mash them into a movie, and then we're going to put that movie up on YouTube. You'll note there's a separate bar for rendering, and I can go to it right there. We're normally under Model, and that right there is Render, and this gives us tools related to rendering. Now, I have this set up on Texture Decal because I'm looking at the various images that I want to see here. That doesn't matter too much. I will not put it on high quality because bad things will happen. If you go to OpenGL, it will be darker. These are all just approximations of what this thing looks like. When we pull a render region, Q, like that, you get an idea what it looks like. The render region actually contacts the rendering engine, in this case Mental Rays, and dumps all the stuff into it so that you can see the final result. And you see it takes a couple seconds. Probably longer even. Hope it doesn't crash. It could crash. It will normally come up with a little thing in the bottom telling me what it's doing, which also relates to how the rendering works. Man, this seems unhappy. Well, meanwhile, to kill time, this is the actual video itself that got up there. If we look here, let's do this here. We should see the quality. This was put up at 720p, meaning it's 720 pixels high by 1280 pixels wide. We'll watch the rest of it later. This finally rendered. That in there is the quality I want everything to render at. Now, there's a menu. Let me show you that menu. Hey, Jamie. It's over here. I'm going to hit it. It's going to hit Options. And this is a subset of the stuff I need to really render. But again, just a subset. I've decided to use the Mental Ray renderer, and these are the settings for the Mental Ray renderer. Now, let me close that because we're going to look at a different mode entirely. Not entirely. I'll close that and I'll close that. If I go underneath the bar on the left here where it says Render, and then I go under Render, there's something else called a Render Manager. I'm going to click this and open it. It's going to open a big dialog. This dialog has all the information I need to render. And you know how when I went into saving, like that saving is not easy. It's hard to do. There's a lot of stuff you have to do about it. Rendering's also hard to do. And Softimage has, over the last 20 years, gone back and forth on like make rendering look easy, make it hard, make it easy, make it hard, and they've sort of left it make it hard. They've left it make it hard because it really is the end result of everything. And I can give you an example. If you think of a printer, you know, you have a printer at home and you're in Microsoft Word and you type something and it goes to the printer and you're happy generally, right? But if you didn't have the printer, you could work in Microsoft Word all day long, but you don't have any finished thing, right? Your render engine is your printer, basically. Your render engine takes all of those instructions and things you've set up in this interface and then actually spits them out into finished stuff. Now, as such, your printer does a lot without you thinking about it. Like if you've ever printed professionally, or knows someone who's like a graphic designer, they're dealing with like color separations and you know, CMYK colors and Pantone and all of this stuff that huge industries are based on. Mental Rays is like that. It has that many settings or more to be concerned about to get stuff out of it. Now you could say it's just like having like a small Brother Canon printer at home and you push the button and hopefully it comes out okay. But then when you really get down to it, when you have to print something important, you end up spending 50 pages of paper and wasting all this ink and all that stuff. This is very similar that way. At the very least, you don't have to waste all the product with it. You have all of these settings to be concerned about, and there's a default set of them that's pretty good, but you should have some idea what they are so you can get where you want to go with it. Now, let me go over just a little of this quick, and then we'll show some of the rendering itself. The output's important. This is the default pass. The default pass is generally just the output of the image the way we would see it in the render region. The pass renderer, use scene render options. That basically means I'm going to use the options for Mental Rays because that's the default scene renderer. And then this is really important. This is where it's going to go and what it's going to be. And actually to modify this, I have to click it and then hit edit. And when I do, you'll see even here, I don't really get a file name. I get something down here. Because of all the other settings, this is telling me where it's going to be. In my project folder, in this case, for instance, Softimage, there's a folder called Render Pictures. And in Render Pictures, it's going to write the frames out as final, default, pass, main, and then a number, and then an extension. Now, I know that because of this up here. Now, I type the final in. It will normally say this. And you can leave it like that. The things in parentheses basically are they're global variables for what pass and frame buffer are, so it knows what to say. If you want to put a name in front of them, like if I wanted to put my name in front of them, I could put F. Schmidt, and now they'll all say that before they go. Now here's the format. I am using Openexr. Openexr is it's a format with deep color. It uses 16 bits per color channel per pixel rather than 8 by the way this is set up. That can be useful if you want to worry about color correction later. Their default format is still this, Softimage Pick, which you should never use. If you just leave it on, it will default to that and you'll get these images that basically you can do almost nothing with. TIFF is a universal. If you pick TIFF, everything generally works pretty well. I'm going to recommend you pick the Openexr. Openexr is a format designed by Industrial Light and Magic to replace the Cineon format, which is the old film format. It will store everything you need, and the rest of these should fall in place. This is what you're going to make, what frames. You could go timeline, which will do everything from beginning to end, 1 to 2400 in this case. I know I don't need that. I want to do a frame range from 3 to 1800. And let me close this quick so I can show you. I'm going to close that for a second. That's because when I look here, I know that the first couple of frames I just don't need. And then if I go up here by 1800, I'm done. It's just a still frame after that. So I've decided I'm going to render just from 3 to 1800. Your mileage may vary, as they say, whatever sequence you need rendered, you tell it to do it there. Let me go back there, render, render, render manager. And you see I have 3 to 1800. Step, I want to do every frame. If I wanted to get a quick preview, I could do every 10th frame. I could do every 5th frame. In general, I want just the one. And now this is really important. Which camera are you going to render? I had 2 cameras, and I want to make sure that it's this camera here, camera 1, and let's play it. We'll see what that plays like. This is what I want to have output. So to get that output, I have to make sure that I have camera 1 set up as my camera to render. If I only have one camera in the scene, it's going to be that one. By the way, that thing I said about it being harder, which it is, if you get any of these wrong, you could spend days rendering. And then you could come back and it could all be incorrect. And that's why, when you get right down to it, it's hard to do. The defaults might be okay, but if you know what all these things are, you can make sure you're in the right place before you get any further. Okay, let me go back here to render my render manager. We have camera 1. The pass output resolution, you guys have been set up on 1280 by 720, this HD format, so that will probably be fine. So you know, not that I recommend it, you can switch that here. You could switch to different cameras. You can switch to 4K cameras. Strikes me they even have IMAX and stuff in there if you want it. But this format, ooh, I did change it, didn't I? I'll cancel that by going back here and saying don't override, and it will go back to its default. This format is an HD format. Most HD things can play it, and it's smaller than 1920 by 1080, so your rendering time is less. Again, you can pick different ones if you want, but I'm going to say this is okay. I have motion blur on. Motion blur, if I'm moving my camera, will give me a different result. Now, the renderer. Let's do this first. Based on all these settings, I can get a quick preview. Not quick, but a preview. Let's say I go to frame 1000. If I click this button here, this is now going to use those settings and render me that frame. So I can take some place deep in my project and I can say, okay, well, is that one okay? Why do you think it's still rendering the first frame? Because I'm just seeing spaces, why? We'll let that finish. Actually, I don't even need to, I'll close it. And I'll pick a different place here. Oh, I see why, because I moved something desperately in my scene, see that? That's better. Okay, now I'm gonna try that render preview again. And I can shrink this up a little bit. You guys have more screen real estate, lucky you. Preview. I recommend you jump around your scene a few different places. Go to the end, go to the middle, go to the beginning, let it generate a frame, just so you know. I've been on many projects where people render for hours or days or sometimes even, well, I've never known anybody who rendered for weeks and got this to happen, but you render for a long period of time and come back and your frames are wrong. They're all black, it's the wrong camera, you forgot a light. So this is the time to get all of that stuff straight. Now you'll see this takes longer. This is more like what it will actually take to do. And by the way, if I like these, you can save the picture separately. Ooh, I shouldn't have clicked that yet. As one of the image formats just to take it home or to see it or to show it to someone, whatever you want to do. As you'll note, and actually it was a really bad idea of me to start this rendering. Do you see how my video's slowing way down over there? Rendering uses every processor resource I have. And actually we'll discover that in a moment. Okay, this is my task manager, which I'm not even certain this is recording because it's using so much. Do you see that CPU usage? When you're rendering, every single processor cycle you have is in use. So it's a good time to not use your computer. I'm going to hit bail that there. And actually we'll see if this comes back to us even. Eventually that should drop back down to 0. It's going to get closer. Come on, come on. You can do it. Wow. I think it's still in the background dealing with something, probably some tiles. Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to double click that like that, and I'm going to put it like this down here so we can just see it there. And we'll look a little bit more at here. Let's say I like all of that. This is a really important part, and actually, before I do that, I'm going to say, do you see the skipped rendered frames here? That can be an important thing to click, especially if you want to use multiple machines. If I have all of my files, this whole scene project saved in a drive that everyone can see, like our ISIS, what I can do if I have that clicked is I can render on multiple machines to make things go faster. I'll show you how momentarily. Let me close this. And if I like those settings, see my processor usage finally dropped down. I would go to File, Save As, and I would call this logo render final, because any change I've made I want to save. And you'll notice that I'm up to, in this directory, I have at least 20 different logo render finals, because that means I've been ready to render my final logo at least 20 times when I've thought I have to change something, and then I resave it. Now I want to know, I number it because I know that the very last one is the most important one, the one I'm using. I'll name this one 21. Like that, and I would hit OK. Now if I was really good about this, like if I said that's everything I want, everything's the way I want it to be, I would click Render, Current Pass, and I'll click it just so you can see it. And it will just error out anyway, I hope. And it would start the actual rendering process. I'm going to bail it or else we won't be able to use this. And the computer would just sit there. It would run for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, generating these frames, which I'm going to show you. Much like those cooking shows where they show you how to make something, and then they already have one made. I already have this made, if we can bail this. I'm going to go to our drive, Art293, and I know that this is in my folder, Francis Softimage, Render Pictures. These are all those images, final default path. See that? Now, you can see the size of them here. They're about 3 megabytes a piece. You'll notice they would probably open in Photoshop. Let's see what happens when we double click it. Yep, they'll open in Photoshop. And that these are the individual images that generated. A couple things we can note. We'll say OK. Yes, that's one of them. You notice it's much brighter than it should be, which is something we'll deal with momentarily. I can see how long it takes to render them. I was using multiple machines, actually a lot of machines. I think Rajiv set that up, which is good. So in 726, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 frames rendered. And if I keep looking, I can see it's about 8 frames a minute, which means I can figure out how long it will take to render. If you go all the way to the bottom here, you'll see the last frames finished rendering at 7 something a.m. Let's keep going. It's about 1800. There it is. The last frame finished rendering at 12:06 p.m. on the next day. So this took about somewhere around 15 or 20 hours of rendering using multiple machines, which is something we'll talk about later, but that's not uncommon. We have this class on Friday. One of the reasons we have it on Friday is that if you set up machines rendering, they can render all weekend long, so that they'll just keep going until people come in on Monday. And that's render time, that's what it takes. Now, I have all these frames, I still haven't made a movie yet. I'm going to show you quickly how to make this movie using After Effects, and then I'm going to let you give this a shot. I'm going to go down here, and let's open After Effects. You can use Premiere, you can use other things too, but we have After Effects, and After Effects gives me the option to also control a couple things. Okay, fine. Now, when you see like a feature film that's 3D, the reasons they use this process of these frames is so that you can have people working on different scenes at the same time. So I don't render the first frame and then just render all the way to the end of the very last frame. What I do is I have teams of people that are rendering, working on different scenes all through the project. The reason I bring that up is that every 3D movie you've ever seen has been done this way with these hunks of frames. There's some big advantages to it. Like, here's a huge one. If I'm generating a QuickTime movie and my machine crashes, I lose everything. So imagine if I was rendering those 20 or 22 hours, and it was all mashing into QuickTime, and then one frame messed up, which it did a few times. I'd have to start all over again. If I render individual frames, the only thing that gets messed up is a single frame. So when they're working on huge movie projects, they couldn't possibly risk that sort of problem. They break it all down into frame sequences like this, and then they have people working on 5 seconds here, 10 seconds there, 15 seconds there, and they have an editor and effects people who are in some sort of editing program, like After Effects sometimes, to put it all together in the end. And that way you can do fades and dissolves, and you can add sound and all those other things. Now, let's bring these frames in. If I just go here and I go Import, File, I can find that directory over here. Where am I here? Another thing you should make sure is that you have enough room. On the ISIS, we have enough room. But if you're going to a USB key, you might not. Render pictures. And I want to pick the first one, Final Default Pass. Three, that's where I started. You'll see I can say sequence. I want to open it as a sequence. I'm going to hit import. And it will take in the whole sequence. Okay. A couple things about it. It comes in at 30 frames per second default. I didn't render it at that. I'm going to go and interpret footage. And I'm going to tell it that it came in at 24, which it did. And I'm going to hit... Actually, I'm going to hit ignore on the alpha, but that shouldn't make a big difference. Good. Now, if I right mouse click, I can hit new comp from selection. What this just did is this made me a new composition. That is my whole thing from that sequence. So I have, it's the exact length, it's everything I want. Now that color problem. This is an issue that has to do with gamma, actually, and I was aware this is going to happen. In After Effects here, I can correct that quickly because I have everything handy to do this. We'll go under Effects, I'll go to Color Correction. I could probably just do this and it would fix most of it. There are other, I would truthfully correct this differently, but for now, just to give you an idea. Now I can also, and this should eventually kick the color in, kick the color in, kick the color in. You know, I don't like that color at all now that I mention it. Let me delete that effect and let me put a different one on it. We're there, good. I'm going to go to Effect, I'm going to go to Color again, Color, Color, Color. I don't want to go to Curves, I'll go to Curves. And I'm going to make this look the way I want it to look. That I like a lot better. Good. That's the sort of dark I'm looking for. I also can get a preview here to actually see the thing. If I click this button, this is the first time I would really see it playing for me. This was going to load it into RAM and give me some idea what it looks like. This also could take a long time though, which I think it normally would. I'm going to hit the space bar so it will show me that first little bit, which truthfully I don't love, but because I want this video to be shorter, I'm going to show you how I would output it from here once I was happy with it. Anything you can do in After Effects, you can do in here, figure it out. You like it, then we're going to output it. I'm going to go to File, Add to Adobe Media Encoder Queue. Click. Hopefully it's going to do something good. This is going to make it into the movie that we want. This takes anything I did in here and puts it here. There it is. I can check things about it here. If I go here, H264 is actually correct. How about that? Look at that. I could even fix the LUTs here if I wanted. This tells me what it's going to make. It's going to make 24 frames per second, progressive 114. I think this is all perfect, I think. It just seems so unlikely that that's the case. This would even export audio if I added it. Match settings, 1280 by 1024, VBR. I don't like those target bit rates, but maybe I'm just being maximum bit rate, megabits per second. I'm okay with a larger file size. I might regret that, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. Where's it going to go? Output name, final default path. Let's find that. This is what I would want to upload. I'm going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to call it my name so I can get it easily. Save, and I would hit OK, and I would hit play to render it. This is going to now mash that all into a movie. It gives me some idea what it's doing down there. It says how long it's going to take, yada, yada, yada. I'm not going to let it go the whole way through. When it's done, I will have the actual movie file. And the movie file I can play. I probably even want to save that movie file. Most importantly, I want to upload that movie file. You've got to upload these things to YouTube because we're going to play them back from YouTube. It has to be some place where people can see them. This format, which it's defaulting to, MPEG-4 or H.264, which are the same thing roughly, that is a good means of mashing video to make it small. It is the actual finished thing you want, but you've got to upload it once this is done. There's probably a way I can bail. Yeah, I can bail here. Let's see. Stop. Would you like to finish the... No. Okay, that's what it says when it's done, and probably it gave me something. Maybe it didn't even render it out, but it would have put it here. I would have played it back. That would have been great. And then we would go to here, and we would upload it. Upload. The file you're looking at right there was one that was uploaded recently. I can even show you. Video Manager. This will give me all the information about when I uploaded it. Upload time, February 15th, 8:57 p.m., you know, various other information about it. This is the finished result of what I need. And then I can pick a thumbnail. Again, you don't have to keep them up there. You can even keep them private if you want, but I need you to upload them. In a year or two, or maybe even 6 months, when you need to make demo reels, you need access to your stuff. And YouTube is a great place to store that access. Okay? So, what do you guys think about that? You get all of your camera work happy, you figure out your render queue till it looks really good, then, we'll hop back over there. You go to this render bar over here, you go to Render, Render Manager, you make sure all this stuff is cool. You can do a couple test renders, previews. There's some other settings you might want to change over here depending how things look, but in general we won't worry about them right now. And then when you're certain you like all of this stuff, you save as, final, and then you start it rendering. Okay? I'm going to stop this.